do a thought experiment with you guys. Now, close your eyes. Imagine something graceful. Imagine something with strength. Imagine something that toes the line so perfectly that it sets trends at every development it's ever had. If it had legs, it'd look good in a suit. Now, open your eyes. I know you're thinking about me, but I'm actually talking about the Ford Mustang. My name is Derrick Matheny, and my passion for the Mustang has lasted a long time. When I was 10 years old, my dad worked at his childhood friend's auto body shop over the summer. It specialized in classic cars, further specializing in the Ford Mustang. And ever since then, I was in love. About a year ago, I drove 2 hours to get one and drove it back with no license plates, no seat belts, and an exhaust that leaked into the cabin. Not my brightest moment, but I'm sure that it proves for itself that I'm super passionate about the topic. So let's dive into the history of the Mustang. When it debuted in 1964, it was honestly a class of its own. Lee Iacocca, head of division at Ford Motors at the time, had a simple vision. He wanted a car that was 2,500 pounds or less for $2,500. When the car debuted, the same day it showed up on showroom floors. On that opening day, it sold 22,000 units. Every day afterwards, in 1964, it sold 1,200 units, totaling out to $1 billion for its inaugural year. $1 billion. So needless to say, these cars were wildly popular and had made their mark. But as I said earlier, it's a class of its own. It wasn't a muscle car to start out with, but actually labeled as a pony car. And that was due to the low weight ratio as well as it being a cheaper, more affordable unit. So the first development that Ford made with their newly popular car came in 1968. What they did was that they made their fastback model with more sweeping lines, as well as being further cemented in pop culture with the movie Bullitt with Steve McQueen. Super cool movie, by the way. He does a lot of his own driving. If you're ever watching it, you'll know he's doing his own driving if the rear view mirror is pointed down and you can see his chin. If it's up, you can't see him. It's a stunt driver and he's faking it. As you can see, these are the sweeping lines of the Bullitt Mustang. That's the particular Bullitt Mustang, which is a fastback version of the 1968. Now, these big engine cars were great and all, and these improvements were made to rival their competitors, the Chevy Camaro and the Dodge Charger. However, the car that was once targeted towards baby boomers before they ruined everything was all of a sudden not applicable anymore because of the gas crisis of the early 70s. So what was Ford's response? That is, the little engine that couldn't, the Ford Mustang II. The Ford Mustang II came in an inline-4 version as well as a V6. Needless to say, it didn't make any power, it didn't share any components with the older Mustangs, and it was universally hated as well as sullied the name in the minds of all Mustang lovers far and wide. However, it was important because while their competitors, the Chevy Camaro and the Dodge Charger, completely withdrew their brand in terms of bringing it out later in the future, Ford tried to hold on and keep the Mustang relevant, with a degree of success. Not very well, though. Into the future, Ford eventually atoned for their mistakes with the Ford Mustang II by releasing a Mustang on the Fox chassis, which was shared with 14 other Ford models at the time. It was born to be the Fox body. Now, the Fox body is every Mustang owner's dream, for the most part, because of how customizable they are. With a huge aftermarket selection, you can truly use a Fox body for anything. As you can see, that's what a Fox body looks like. If you want something to go drag racing, you can hook up a Fox body to do that. If you want to go driving on some windy roads in the canyons, a Fox body will do that. So on and so forth. People have made so many variations of these things, you can do almost anything with them. I myself Wish I had a Fox body, but clearly I already have one, and I don't have a garage space for it, nor the money for the most part. So, as the 90s came around, Ford needed to do something different. The times were changing, and they needed a more modern look and feel, and 90s was all the rage, so they came up with the SN95 Mustang. It wasn't super well received, as it was amoeba shaped and slower than the other models. However, it kept the Mustang around, I guess. So this is that SN95. However, Ford again made up for their mistake with what's considered to be one of the lower rated ones with the New Edge Mustang. The New Edge was released in the early 2000s, mostly known for applying itself to the tuner culture that was really popular at the time, a la Fast and the Furious, great movie. And so it also had a lot of very interesting models that came with it, such as the SVT, which is this one, which I think is very interesting. I don't really like it, but it has a super huge wing on it, as was the Terminator version, and my personal favorite of this era, which is the Mystachrome Cobra. All of those are sure to be collector cars in the future, and Ford did a really good job diversifying its output with this generation. However, Ford realized, obviously, that the Mustang was popular because it had been around for so long. However, they needed a way to make it applicable for the long term. They found their answer in 2005 when they released the 5th generation Mustang. Now, while it's probably dull to all of us here because we've seen it for so long, at the time, it was absolutely bananas. When this came out, they couldn't believe that it looked like the older cars, but had all of the nice, cool things that newer cars have, like electronic fuel injection and a somewhat okay gas mileage. So, what's important about these is that at the time, if you got the 5.0 GT version, they made almost 300 horsepower for around $30,000 at the time. And so nowadays, it's not a big deal to have 300 horsepower. Think of Dodge with its Demon or its Hellcat. But they were really, as I said earlier, setting trends with this car and shaping the sports car market as a whole. Now, in regards to the future, though, electric vehicles will always be on the mind. I asked all of you guys, and you said that you didn't really think there was a market for an electric Mustang, but I'd have to disagree with all of you. While an electric Mustang shouldn't be the only version, I would be super pumped to see an electric Mustang that had all the torque in the world. And to prove why we could use this, I made a graph that shows most of the generations that I just talked to you about in their miles per gallon. The 68 is down here at 12, Mustang 2 is at 16, even though it's meant to combat the gas crisis. The Fox body actually comes in at the highest because they started using electronic fuel injection at the time, and the 2018 Mustang GT comes in at like 19. So they're not the best for fuel economy, although they're great cars in general. So that's why I think that they would do fine in an electric environment. So now that I've told you a little bit about the Mustang, you can understand my huge passion for the cars, as well as knowing about why it's such as big of a trendsetter as it is. So, thanks for listening.
Oh yeah, that was jarring.